Welcome to episode 9 of the AmericanNoise podcast, and today we look over the third game of the XFL Week 1 campaign, and apparently the highest rated. This was the second of the two Fox games. It pulled in a 3.39 rating, which was 1.10 more than the first Fox game and 0.09 more than the first ABC game. Of course, this game is the Vipers at the Guardians, and the story of the game was the fact that it seems that you can change the league, you can change the mascot, but you can't change the fact that Tampa Bay QBs are colorblind and will gladly throw to the opposing team without any care in the world. At least it seemed like Aaron Murray was trying to copy Winston at every stance. Another of the main stories is the simple fact that Tampa Bay could not score in the red zone. They couldn't score at all. And the funny thing is that they had almost twice the amount of net yards compared to their opponent. Tampa Bay had 394 yards, a nearly 400-yard day, and only had 3 points to show for it. Meanwhile, since the New York Guardians had 23 points and 226 net yards, they had a point for every 10 yards of offense. Of course, Murray himself had a pretty amniotic game. 16 completions on 34 attempts, an under 50% completion ratio, 231 yards, 0 touchdowns, as the team had 0 touchdowns, one of only 2 teams in Week 1 to be unable to get into the end zone, and 2 interceptions. A rating of 45.1, pretty much universally accepted as the worst of the QB Week 1 performances, and due to injuries, and maybe even without them, it's not going to start Week 2, and his starting job is officially in doubt. The main issue was for the Vipers, among other things with Murray, was the red zone trips. They were great in between the 20s of getting yards and getting these first downs, as shown by their total net yards. But in their 4 red zone trips, the Vipers had a field goal, an interception, one of the 2 Murray interceptions, and 2 turnovers on downs in the fourth quarter when they were trying to desperately make up the lead. The ball did start in the hands of the home team. The Guardians would return it all the way to the Tampa Bay 48 to start off in front of a crowd of about 17,000, as with the other Week 1 games at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. They immediately fell into a 4th and 4 at the Tampa Bay 42. McGloin looked short middle, and he would find Powell for the first down. The first down got him all the way to the 27-yard line. They would eventually get a 3rd and 7 conversion from the 24. Horn would be found deep right out of bounds at the Tampa Bay 6. They would have a penalty before the next snap. They had some issues with substitution, and they either got a delay of game or false start. Just too many men on the field seems to be the general idea, and they got pushed back to the 11. It wouldn't matter. Eventually, McGloin would scramble, find the end zone, and the first Guardians touchdown of the season. And not only that, but Cook would run it himself for a 1-point conversion, and just 5 away in the game, the home team established dominance. Now, the Vipers, as we'll see many times in this game, could have gotten back into this game and taken the lead or tied it or at least gone from 1 point quite easily. They did this many times throughout the campaign. They just were unable to score. They'd get the ball at their own 37, get a 3rd and 1 conversion at the 46, and then would get a 1st and 10 at the 50, a 1st and 10 at the 40, and a 1st and 10 at the New York 23. They would eventually have a 3rd and 12 at the 25. Murray would find Horn all the way to the New York 6 with a 19-yard gain, and they had a 1st and goal. Murray dropped back, and he was looking for the tight end. Truesdell unanimously agreed, at least in the fantasy community, the top tight end in the league. One of the reasons that the Vipers was favored was their receiving attack. That you'd think that Trestman, the father of the CFL modern offense, and with the top tight end, and until he was injured and put on injured reserve, Antonio Callaway, who was looking like a top 5 receiver, you'd think they'd be able to carry Murray to a strong campaign. Well, it didn't happen, at least in Week 1, as the pass was intercepted by Soro all the way 7 yards deep in the end zone, and they would immediately get a touchback there. So, New York gets the ball at their own 20, and the nearly 5-minute drive for the Vipers is utterly wasted. It's not the first. It may have been the first time it happened in the game. It was definitely not the last. Guardians would get a 22-yard gain thanks to Victor running the ball. They would get to 3rd and 6 at their own 46. McGloin would look deep for the first down left side of the field for Redding. Kelly would break it up, and New York would have to punt it all the way to the Tampa Bay 18. They first play, Smith gets the ball, gets a solid 12 yards to the 30, and the penalties hit. A false start was Tampa Bay's first offensive penalty of the day. Knocked him back to the 25, 1st and 15. And Murray fumbles the ball. He does regain it on the snap, and he even gets it to Trustadell, who fumbles it. Again, at least that was the plan. They eventually reviewed it, and they determined it was an incomplete pass, so it ends up being 2nd and 15. Murray throws a couple of incompletions, so they have to punt it, and it's an extremely eventful, shall we say it, 4 and out, since they did get the first down conversion beforehand. New York immediately goes to work. It's a 3-play drive next. They get a 2nd and 10 on the second play of the drive at their own 43, and they get into Tampa Bay territory with a 45-yard deep heave to McKay. There's already talk of a connection between McGloin and McKay. McGloin gets it to Pearson for 12 yards later, and that's a touchdown, and New York is already dominant. They are 14-0 in the early part of the second quarter after another T. Cook 1-point attempt rush. It seems to be their bread and butter PAT play. So Tampa's down 14-0, no problem. They had a really bad possession the second time, but they drove all the way down the field in the first one. They just got to get in rhythm, and their defense needs to stop giving up 7 points every drive. They start their own 25, and on the first play of the drive, Murray goes deep left to Tolliver, gets a 44-yard gain all the way to the New York 31, and they completely collapse there. They eventually end up with a 4th and 11 at the NY 32. Franks tries a 50-yard field goal, and it seems that pretty much every missed field goal in Week 1 just went wide left. There seems to have been a poll that just determined that the balls were going to go to the left, and they were going to miss the sticks in some points. New York gets the ball back at their own 40. They have the 14-0 lead. Tampa Bay has wasted yet another scoring opportunity. No surprise there. They do 3 and out. They do punt it back to Tampa with 9:25 left. Tampa's in their own territory. They begin a long march down the field. They do get stopped at their own 48. Eventually, after a 9-play drive, the 9th play of that drive requires Shum to punt once more, gets it all the way to the New York 15, and New York goes to work again. They get all the way to their own 44. They get a McGloin to Powell connection all the way to midfield for 6 yards. A penalty on Tampa Bay for a neutral zone infraction extends the chains once more. It's 1st and 10 at the Tampa 45, and they collapse. 3 straight McGloin incompletions. The first 2 were to Horn. McGloin would end up throwing the 3rd and 10 pass away, and yet another punt for New York. They're also starting to slowly grind to a halt on their offensive side, and with 1:37 left, Tampa Bay gets the ball at their own 15. The first play, Murray looks for his number 1 connection. He looks for Truesdell, his tight end, and he gets a 27-yard gain out of it. And on a 3rd and 10, the Tampa Bay 42 later, 1:06 left, Murray gets sacked for a 9-yard loss, which you'd think would be a drive ender, until you realize New York had too many men on the field, so they get a second leaks on life, and it's a 3rd and 5 at the Tampa Bay 47. Murray's looking for Horn. He gets an 11-yard gain, but they also get extra help. An unnecessary roughness penalty for another 15 yards. They're to the New York 27. So, Tampa Bay's got 41 seconds left. They're down by 14, but they're just outside the red zone. They're finally going to get on the board, get some momentum going to the half. Nope. Murray looks deep, down around the 15 to 10 yard line for Tolliver. He does not find Tolliver. In fact, he finds a black uniform in his path. It seems that Bryce Jones, the right cornerback, got it. He intercepts the ball, gets to the New York 27, and just like that, a third Tampa Bay scoring opportunity is wasted in one half. And Tampa Bay is shut out in the first half. New York, with 20 seconds left, McGloin goes deep to Pearson for a 32-yard gain, gets him to the Tampa Bay 31, and with just a few seconds left, McCrane lines up for a 49-yard field goal and nails it, and the first half is 17-0. And any normal game, this should be not a 17-point game, but anywhere from a 5-point game in a Guardians' favor to like a 3-point in the Vipers' favor. The Vipers utterly choked away the first half. They'd utterly choke away the second half. The story of the game is the Vipers unable to score when it counts. The defense for the Guardians kept bending, but it never truly broke. Tampa Bay does get the ball to start the half. They have to punt on a 4th and 17 from their own 37, just 3 minutes into the half. New York goes to work for a bit. They're stopped at their own 36 and have to punt themselves, so teams have traded punts about 6 minutes into the second half. Tampa Bay gets the ball back. They have a very long drive down the field. In fact, this is a 16-play drive, an extremely long play. It drains the clock all the way from 8:42 to 1:05 left in the third. And despite this huge long drive, which never saw a third down until 3rd and 1 at the New York 49, and then again 3rd and 3 at the New York 14, Tampa has finally gotten all the way to the 5, and they stall. A couple of incomplete passes for Tolliver on 2nd and 3rd down means that Tampa decides to kick. They don't go for it. And the 4th chance for a scoring drive is the first one that's successful. Franks puts in a 23-yard chip shot, and the Vipers walk away with only 3 points. They're still down by 14. Not only that, but they've wasted about 7 minutes off the clock for only 3 points. There's only 16 minutes left in the game. New York slowly moves into the 4th quarter, and they get all the way to the Tampa Bay 41, but they have to punt it. Vogel puts in a perfect dime to the Tampa Bay 7. Dye's forced to fair catch it. Murray drops back into the end zone. He looks for the tight end Trustell, and Trustell does catch this, unlike the first attempt. But while the first attempt, back in the first, that New York made to cause a fumble on one of his completions failed because he didn't make a football move. He only got 1 foot down. Trustell gets 1, 2, 3 feet in and fumbles. Summers recovers and takes it to the house. Nail in the coffin with 11:54 left. The 1-point conversion is unsuccessful for once, but the game is way out of reach. In just technically a 15-second drive from the start of the play to the fumble recovery to the end zone celebration by New York, it is now a 23-3 game, which would end up being the final score. Tampa Bay does make another long drive. They get all the way to the New York 9-yard line for a 1st and goal. They get 3 yards on the Smith rush. Smith goes up the middle for 1. Murray goes back in the shotgun and is eventually sacked. It's only a 1-yard loss, but it's a 4th and goal at the 6. Murray looks for Horn in the end zone. Nobody home. And another scoring drive wasted by Tampa Bay. It seems to be the story of the entire week. Tampa Bay gets down all the way to the red zone and just is unable to convert when it counts. New York makes a short little run out of the clock drive. They eventually punt it back with about 4 minutes left to Tampa. Tampa drives again. They get all the way, 1st and goal to the 2. They get to the 1 on a Smith rush, and then a false start hits them inside the 2-minute line. Of course, at this point, it's completely over. It's 20 points inside of 2 minutes. It's a 3-possession game. Eventually, on a 4th and 2, Flower gets sacked for a tremendous 15-yard loss by Sutton. A couple of rushes by Victor, and I'm glowing Neal later, and that's it. New York, despite what everything Tampa should have converted on, dominates in probably the most convincing fashion in week 1 of any of the games. Which, again, Tampa has technically 6 scoring opportunities in this game, 4 in the red zone. The 2 outside of the red zone, one was a missed field goal and one was intercepted near the end of the half. The 4 in the red zone just got intercepted at the wrong time. They took a field goal when they probably should have gone for it, but then again, knowing their luck, they probably would have failed and they'd gotten shut out. And then the final 2, when they pretty much had no chance, they just drove down the field, got to the goal line, and just couldn't punch it in. That's the story of the Vipers. They just couldn't convert. Now, it's likely that they will have to roll without Murray. Murray got hurt during the game. He is unlikely. He could start for week 2, but it is looking unlikely. They're probably going to be rolling out Terry Cornelius and Quentin Flowers as their main guys. It looks like Chase Littleton will come in as emergency third-string duty. And New York, meanwhile, while the Vipers have to go on the road and are actually favored by 2.5 or so over Seattle, New York goes into what will probably be the game of the week on ABC. They face DC in a battle for Eastern dominance. While the Vipers are reeling and the Battlehawks are likely going to get destroyed by the Roughnecks, I mean, they could pull out the road upset. But this game, Guardians at DC, is likely the duel for early Eastern supremacy. Whoever wins that controls the Eastern, pretty much the destiny of the Eastern Conference / division for the next 3 or 4 weeks. But that's basically the Vipers at Guardians game in a nutshell. The Vipers simply unable to do anything of note despite having nearly 400 yards of offense. What a disaster. It seems that the Vipers may have gotten the Bears trustmen instead of the CFL Modern Offense Innovator trustmen. Hopefully for them, they will be able to rebound against what is looking like a 30K crowd against them in Seattle. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, we'll see you next time for episode 10 and the final week 1 review game in which neither team deserved to win, to be honest. And we'll see you next time. This has been Andrew Styles hosting the American Noise Podcast, episode 9. Folks, if it's a Tampa QB, it's going to throw an interception.